Welcome, if anybody's watching. I'm Chauntee Schuler-Irving. This is Nidra Sous La Terre. And we wanted to come together, join forces today to talk about many a things. Many a things. So some of you guys know Nidra, some of you guys know me. And Nidra and I, if you did not know, actually go way, way back. Don't we, Nidra?
We do, to the University of Richmond. I won't say what year, but we were there.
We may be older than we look. A good thing. But no, Nidra and I went to two colleges together, and undergrad and grad school, and our paths have been parallel in many ways, although quite different. But now we have kind of circled back, and at this phase of life, we're finding ourselves having a lot of similar thoughts, experiences, and just wanted to take some time to chat about a few things together. So thank you for wanting to talk, Nidra.
Thank you, Chauntee. I'm excited.
So Nidra and I are both acting professors. And when COVID hit, we started hitting different bumps in the road with what to do as actors and as professors, but also we started to hear from students, what should we do in the situation? How should we keep, how should we really keep focused, and how can we keep going forward in the industry when the industry was slowing down? And then everything after George Floyd's killing happened, and the world kind of exploded. And that brought on a whole new set of issues that I know myself, and maybe Nidra feels the same way. We started exploring about our histories and our past as people, as women, as Black people, but also in the industry, and especially as educators in the industry. So Nidra, do you want to start with your journey in that?
Absolutely. So I have been acting professionally for about 15 years. I've been in New York City pretty much exclusively by choice, and started out crazy enough doing soap operas as soon as I came out of grad school. And Chauntee and I were on the same soap. I had a few lines here and there. Chauntee was a major character and did beautiful work on that show. And then
That's kind of you. That's kind of you. It was just so clever. Thank you.
I know, but I know how quickly that well-oiled machine works, and the work that it takes in order to be sort of present and honest in that construct. So I really appreciated your work, the work that I was able to see, you know. I had kind of gotten into soap operas right after graduation. And then I kept going, gosh, musical theater is my dream. How do I do this? I need to train because I need to expand my range, right? And so how do I fast forward through this story? I didn't have the money at the time to train. And so I just worked. I was working all these odd jobs, trying to make money, trying to make ends meet, singing in the subway, all sorts of crazy stuff. And then I went, you know what? I think I want to do more TV and film. And I started focusing more on that. And then the plays started happening, straight plays. And so I started doing a lot of that. And then years later, I finally landed the most random role in Book of Mormon I didn't even want to audition for Broadway musical theater at the time. And then that happened last year, and here we are.
Here we are. But there's so many other things. I mean, you've been on Broadway twice. You did Marvin's Room?
Yes.
And the Underlying Chris?
And the Underlying Chris, yes, which was off Broadway. That was last fall at Second Stage. And I worked, at MTC, at Playwrights Horizons a couple of times. And then, of course, the TV and film has sort of been home. Lots of HBO and NBC and Netflix and
lots
all
of
that
good
fun
stuff. And can you throw out some of your creds, because I know you're being so humble right now. I want to say your whole resume, but just everybody maybe watching this may not know you yet, or they may have seen you and not know you. But yeah.
Oh goodness gracious! I'm not the best at this, Chauntee.
I know, but the humility is lovely. But guys, she's the real deal. She's been working at 4 years. I've seen it from the start, and she's been on Orange is the New Black.
Oh,
Come on, give us
thank
some,
you.
give us some,
Okay,
give us
Orange is
some.
the New Black, Jessica Jones,
Yes,
a couple of the Law and Orders,
yes.
30 Rock, Bull, Elementary. Oh gosh, there's some that I'm missing, but yes,
Yes, I love to
all the
brag.
New York TV shows.
New York Law and Order. Did you get your Law and Order?
A couple of Law and Orders,
Yeah.
yep. Criminal Intent and
Good,
SVU, yep.
good, good. No, I have to brag on her because she's so humble. For real. But you've been working for a long time, and TV and film has become your home. But now,
Absolutely,
as
but
well
now.
as doing all of that, you are also a professor at Pace. And how long have you been doing that? What do you teach?
Yes, so I'm going into my 6th year at Pace University, Pace School of Performing Arts. Prior to that, I was at the New School University, New School for Drama, where actually we went for grad school. I was teaching in their BFA program. And then I was also at NYU's Playwrights Horizons Theater School for about a semester, and then decided, you know what, Pace feels like home. I'm going to stay there. So I started out my first 3 years at Pace teaching in the musical theater program, ironically enough. And then 2 years ago, switched to the film and television program. And now I'm going into my 3rd year there.
Great, great. Awesome. So pretty much she rocks, guys. Awesome.
Can we talk about you and
No,
your
okay.
journey?
We're going back in time again. So Nidra and I, again, we're at the University of Richmond, and I was for sure that I was going to be an actor and heading to New York City. So when I was at the University of Richmond, I started working a lot locally, actually, and ended up getting my equity card in Richmond, Virginia, working at a place called Theater Virginia. And Benny Sato Ambush, who's been around, actually, he was, around in NYU and ACT. He worked with a lot of folks. Actually started letting me know kind of about the wider world of theater from Virginia at that time. And that's how I kind of started dreaming bigger. And so as I went through U of R, I started taking flights to New York just to check it out. I had a good friend there, and I'd crash on her couch. And my speed up story is that I ended up at the Actor Studio Drama School with Nidra at the new school at the time. And I just had that itch that I was just wanting to get out there and work. So while I was in grad school, I was auditioning and kind of doing a crazy little side hustle auditioning while I was in grad school. And then I ended up booking some big work. It was not planned. I thought I would just get some experience under my belt. But I ended up literally booking like a national tour, and I just
Of the
started
producers?
working of the producers at the time. And yeah, I was like tap dance girl number 6. I didn't care. It was awesome. I got to travel around the world, and it was great.
Yeah.
But no, I just started working, and I too had that bug that I really wanted to do musical theater. But in my heart, always felt like I was truly an actor's actor. I was just a storyteller, and I did that through song and dance sometimes. And so I had a really great run of doing musicals for a long time. And years later, I was, so I did off-Broadway shows, tours, did The Lion King on Broadway. And also when I was back in New York, started doing soaps as well. And some little TV things, lots of commercials. And so it was just kind of your working actor. Just my heart and soul was just, I wanted to work and I wanted to be an actor. And so during that time too, I was also teaching workshops and traveling and teaching on the side. And I realized over time that I was getting so much joy out of seeing other people find their light. Even though I got to be in the light every night, I was actually getting more fulfilled by watching other people do that. So literally one night, a makeup artist that I had was doing my makeup for The Lion King. And I was sitting in the chair talking about my students that day and the work that they were doing. And I was so excited, and I was meeting their families. And she said, maybe you should do that one day. And I just said, you know what? That's my daughter. I said, you know what? I think I will. And so I finally ended up going back to grad school to do just that. And so now I'm just beginning my kind of professor journey, and I've taken a lot of shifts in my past since then. So here we are today. Yeah.
Here we are.
Here we are.
That was such a great truncated version of what has been an amazing, expansive career. I still remember going to see you in Crumbs from the Table of Joy in Richmond and Star. I just love watching her. The energy that you have within the craft on stage and on screen is just magnetic. So I'm not surprised by your journey at all, and that you're now in a space to give all that you have to young actors. Yeah, it's beautiful.
You're so sweet. And guys, like, again, I know there's a lot of like, you know, Nidra love going on right now because I love this woman. I really do. But when I was in school, I looked up to Nidra. We were both in the same, my first musical was, we did Anything Goes, and she was Reno Sweetie. And I was the second female lead. And I thought Nidra was the star. And she was like the older sister actor that I looked up to and was like, I would love to be like her. And we ended up doing Mother Courage together. And again, like she was just ahead, and I watched her just kind of blaze the way for me. So I thank her for that. So that's all the love. It's really there. It's really
you walked
there.
in the door a star, so we were happy to have you.
So let's jump into some topics that we started kind of chatting about online. And then we said, let's kind of dig into some of these. So the question is, where do we begin? Because we had so many things that were on our hearts, on our minds, that we've seen in our classrooms, that we've experienced throughout our own careers, that we said, we feel like there is a movement, but what do we do with this energy and kind of maybe this newfound power that we're having, even though I'm not saying we were powerless, but there's a shift. And what do we do with these shifts as artists? What do we do with these shifts as professors? How do we engage students with all that's going on?
Yeah, two big words, Chauntee, stand out for me, and that is understanding and patience. So understanding how the systems work, all of the systems that we're a part of as artists and as actors. And two, employing patience with our expectations for change, right? So what I'm finding with all of my conversations with BIPOC students at PACE and elsewhere is that they finally feel empowered to say something and to ask for, and in many cases even demand, action to be taken. But because there is still this sort of huge gap of knowledge between how change actually happens, there can be, in some cases, a little bit of a push for these things to happen quicker than the system actually allows for them to happen. And so I'm trying to encourage my students to figure out how these systems work, who makes policy changes at the university level, how to communicate with provosts and deans at the university level, and then sort of what to do when you're waiting for the change to happen. Because when you're waiting, you're thinking nothing is actually being done. But in fact, there are emails, there are Zooms, there are people going, okay, great, we got this 30-page document of demands. What do we do with it? And how do we make long-lasting change?
Yes.
And so the good thing is that what I've been feeling is that the powers that be are listening. And they have a strong desire to make a shift happen. It's just now we have to do our part and maybe trust that that change is going to happen. And in some time, if we see, okay, this actually isn't shifting, there's still some gaps here, then we can continue to take action. But for now, I encourage understanding and listening, understanding and patience.
That's wonderful. And I think that's such a great point because I often talk to students, and this is something I had to learn as I made the shift from the professional world to academia, is that the professional world often works quickly in an actor's time. Like you need to go in for an audition, you might be on set the next day or the next week, but academia actually has a much longer span of time. in general, like you're booked out for the next year, the year before. They're already planning, you know, syllabi and curriculum 5 years in advance of what shows are going to be happening, who's coming in, the cycle of things, whose, you know, position is for years. So even just the fact that academia works on this kind of long form time frame is so different for maybe a lot of young actors to understand, because it's just about quick. You know, is it happening tomorrow? That's just not how it works. So that's a really great point. You were kind of talking about all of the systems that be. Can you kind of dive in more about that? Is it the system of academia or other systems that you're talking about?
Well, there's always the system at large, right? Just society. The foundations of how these United States were formed, which I think is the blueprint for any and every industry that we engage with if we're living in America. And so whatever we look like at the federal government level is sort of what we're looking at, and sort of mirrors what the industry is, as far as hierarchical structure, as far as who is at the bottom of the totem pole doing a whole lot of legwork, pay structure, I mean, everything. And so if you have a university that is well established and has been around for decades, sometimes maybe even a century or so, then you're looking at something that most likely was created by and for the white wealthy majority. And you're entering into a system that was structured for them. And now we are finally at a place where they're hearing us say, this structure doesn't work for us. They're finally going, oh, we hear you now. What can we do? And we're like, what? Why do you hear me now all of a sudden?
Yes.
But because the structure's been in place for so long, and I mean, the head of our university is an old white man, you know, as they usually are. And so shifting someone's thinking who's in a position of power and who's been in that position of power for a very long time, I think, first of all, takes time. But also knowing that even in the middle, especially in the middle of a pandemic, to change a system that has been ingrained, and we want it to change in a way that is truly inclusive, right? So I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues at Paisley the other day, and for me, there's a difference between a predominantly white system saying we welcome diversity and inclusion, and then a predominantly white structure saying it's not that we just welcome you into our space, we want to integrate this space so that it is our space.
Yes.
It's no longer a white space with diversity, it is just a diverse space.
Yes.
And there's a difference. You have to change the culture of the space.
Yes.
And that takes time.
Yes. And that is again, similar conversations I've been having. It's kind of this idea, this larger idea of actually decolonizing the entire academic structure upon which our entire pedagogy is built. And I'm just going to boil it down, you know, closer to theater because that's what we're talking about, but you could talk about, you know, every subject really, but within the arts, even theater, just how so many things come from the European system. And then they all came to New York, and then all these kind of white New Yorkers created these acting systems that then have boiled down to what we consider just traditional acting methods, right? And so even just saying, well, we'll just have another Black playwright, like maybe we'll just read a little more Susan Laurie Parks, or we'll read Amiri Baraka, but or even just saying, oh, and we'll have one more Black teacher. it's not enough. It's really decentering and decolonizing what is at the center. And that is how you change the culture. It's not by saying, we'll just add in, because we know this idea of the token, you know, is something that's happened for so long, whether it's a token show or a token actor, Black actor or Indigenous person of color, just that you have one there. It's not enough because it's really not shifting the culture. And I think that's what you're talking about. So this idea of decentering, decolonizing, and really saying what we even consider the status quo has to change, right?
Yeah. And that's huge. I mean, it's a system that's been at play for 400 plus years.
Yeah.
So I think a recognizing of what we are demanding and asking for takes a lot of effort, as it should. A lot of effort, a lot of energy, and a lot of conversation, I think is going to help us through sort of what this is. It's a marathon and not a sprint, this shift that we're demanding and that is necessary.
And you feel that even after a lot of the protests were, you know, huge and they're still going on, is that there was a shift from all of this energy and being out front and saying, well, now how do we really transfer this energy for the long term? You know, because even myself, I've had to kind of downgrade and say, how am I making this lasting change in my entire world on top of my creative world and work, right? So just taking that idea and even the idea of patience and shifting that away from the classroom and into the industry, because you work a lot in television and film. I've done, you know, a lot of theater work, but TV and film and theater, they even are two separate worlds with how they function. How do we remain patient, seeing change in a business? You know, I bring up Bell Hooks again, who in 1996 wrote about how even just putting Black people on TV doesn't solve the issue of understanding the culture and the influence and the history that's being brought with this entire amazing group of people that, you know, white people sitting in front of a TV screen would not understand by just seeing someone on TV, the experience. Do you think that's changed now? Have we had some space and time to make that change happen, seeing actresses like Kerry Washington and Viola Davis, and people really make that shift, and some movie makers, Ava DuVernay, like people who are really taking time to make that shift? Or do we feel like people are saying, well, I see them, but I still don't understand?
You know, ironically enough, though it feels like COVID is slowing us down, I think it is fast tracking a lot of things. We were absolutely in a space where shift was happening in the industry. We saw a lot more Black, especially female leads of huge successful series. A lot of Black writers, a lot of really successful Black directors and filmmakers. Like, it was and is really shifting. But when you keep doing this and go up the food chain and look at who's at the very top, very few and far between. But I think COVID, because everyone has to stop, is going to make the industry look very different when we return, especially in the world of theater. This huge uprising that's happening is that even a word? Uprisal?
We're gonna coin it, the uprisal.
It's like upheaval plus uprising.
The uprisal. We're uprisaling. Yes.
But this big uprising that's happening in theater, where we're asking people to throw away the old structure, is like, what is it going to look like when we come back? Are shows like Book of Mormon even going to survive this? You know, are predominantly white off-Broadway theaters still going to have BIPOC support when we come back? Right. And it feels like a lot of the artists, the theater makers, the filmmakers are using this time to go, who do I really want to collaborate with? On what platform do I want my work? And who is my audience? Yes. Because now we have the time and space to think about it. No one's in a rush. Very few things are in production, and we can make big choices like that. I don't know if I'm answering your question,
Oh, yes,
but
yes, no, yes.
yeah, it's challenging, I think, to predict sort of what it's going to be when we come back. But the feeling is that we are never going to go back to what it was. I don't think we're going to allow that to happen now.
Yeah.
Now that yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say this. I've been hearing this idea that people keep saying the new normal is not going to be appropriate. It's just going to be new and different, the new different. And we can expect a normal of what we knew. It's just going to be different.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, have they started, I know that they opened up production in New York. Have they started any of that on the West Coast at all? Do you know?
No, no. In fact, things are slowing down. They were slowly moving towards trying to do things and open air things, and they've even just shut down all of that again because now our numbers are higher than New York right now.
Right.
And just recently that became the case. And so no, it was moving towards maybe happening, but yeah, Gonzies. So
Yeah. Yeah. Can I shift the conversation a little bit and ask you what your experience has been? I know that in many cases we've had similar experiences in that we are often one of the very few Black people in the room. And I'm curious what that sort of journey has been like for you, because that has very much been my story. And then sort of, yeah, how it shaped your journey as an actor and as a woman, and then coming out of this, whenever that happens, is that the space that you still are okay occupying?
yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, I mean, when we first started out, I think like most actors, you are happy to be in any room, you know, because when you're starting out, you're just so thrilled to to have a job, right? And so, you know, even because even starting from our school experience, right, we went to a very, very white private school. It was a tiny population of students of color, like minuscule. Okay.
Yeah.
They
Before
had to have
you came along, I was the only one there
yeah.
for 3 years. And I was like,
the only one there. And like the school as a whole, I mean, literally everyone of color knew each other because it was that small. So even coming from, and I was the only Black person in theater my entire theater experience up until that point, and there was you, right? So you know, for a long time, you're just, you know, at first when you start, people say, oh, well, you know, you may get a comment of, do Black people do that? Because nobody had ever done it from where I came from, right? And so, and as you go along and you go up the ladder, you're just happy to be in the room. But after a while, you say, why am I the only one in the room? Or why is there only one me and one Black guy? And that's like the thing. And so, you know, it was really when I got into Crumbs from the Table of Joy, that was the first Black cast I was ever in. And I was just in awe, but I also felt confused because it felt like such a one-off. And I was like, I've been doing this for a little while. Why does this feel so strange to actually be in a room with all Black actors and mostly Black crew? Like it was a first. And so that was like the first kind of light for me, that I was like, this shouldn't be the case. And I shouldn't be learning how to be in a Black cast for the first time in my, you know, 20s or whatever I was. So as time went on, you know, I went to The Lion King, and that again was another big moment, because then you go to a cast like that, and of course people's like, oh, I love The Lion King, it's my favorite show, you know, all the things you get with that. And there's this idea of, well, you know, you guys have one special show and that's where you go, you know, and then it's like, if it's The Color Purple, well, you have The Color Purple and that's where you go. That's where all the good Black actors go. You know, the good Black actors go to Hamilton, and that's it. And so I started resenting the fact that we were kind of relegated to shows that were for us. And even though they were good shows, that I was like, but we should be able to be in any show, just like so and
Mm-hmm.
so and so so who hops from show to show to show, or the whole cast is white except for one person. Why can't that be us everywhere? Why do we have to be the Black show? You
Mm-hmm.
know, and that started really hitting hard for me. And I saw that within my castmates who I loved, and they would say, you know what, it's just sometimes easier for us to stay in shows like this, one, because we know we're going to get employed, but two, we don't have to keep fighting against who we proving to be who we are, you know. And that started to break my heart. Actually, that's when I started to shift from saying, you know, this acting thing, I've wanted to break barriers and I thought I was going to do that and keep doing that. And I was in every room I wanted to be in. And I started to say, I don't know if this is the way I'm going to be able to break these barriers. Maybe there's some other ways. And that's when I started thinking about teaching. I started thinking about writing, and specifically musical theater writing, because I was like, why are we in all of these musicals that none of us write? And I'm not even talking about males. No Black females really write musicals. And I'm like, that is insane, because we are in all of them. I
Yes.
do a lot of them.
Yes.
And I started saying, I don't know if this is where my power is going to lie in making change. So the idea of me being the only one in the room, I had an evolution with that, and it started changing, and it really has changed my path overall. Yeah, it's been a big journey. That was a very long answer.
No, it was a beautiful and necessary answer. And you're so right. It wasn't until I saw, oh gosh, what was the name of that? Oh, Bella. Yes. Okay. This show blew my mind. And then last year, A Strange Loop.
A Strange Loop was supposed to be amazing.
Also at Playwrights Horizons, written by a Black man, another musical, my favorite musical of all time. Crazy to say.
They said it was amazing.
I was crying and laughing the entire show. It was genius. The music was beautiful and transcendent. And the same with Bella. It was just this magical show about this Black girl who goes on a journey across the country. Like, and I'm sitting in the audience going, these have to go to Broadway. Like, there's no other, they have to be on Broadway. And then you never hear of them again. They make a cast album, and then it like goes out into the ether somewhere. And you're like, how could you not pick up this show? And for me, there have to be some conversations that are happening in the rooms that we are not yet in. Or maybe you are, I don't know. There have to be some conversations happening where producers are going, but nobody's going to come see this. We have to get a name in this show, or nobody's going to come see it. But then I think about a show like, oh my gosh, Passing Strange. And I go, they have a huge cult following. That music is ridiculous. The story is beautiful. Like shows like this can absolutely survive on Broadway. And they had 0 celebrities in that play. And then I think about someone who, God bless him, I'm not his audience, but like Tyler Perry, who the studios were like, no, we don't want you. We don't need you. And he said, I'm going to figure out how to reach my audience, because I know they're out there. Yeah. And I'm going to become a multimillionaire. And he did that. These entities, these shows, these producers, these writers are proving to me that there is a huge industry out there. There's a huge audience for us out there. It's just that people aren't invested enough to actually reach them and to feed them, which at the end of the day is what we're doing as artists, is healing and feeding our communities. Yes. And why would the powers that be invested in doing that for us? We have to do it.
I think that's amazing. And I think that's the conversation happening now. And I think I heard Gabrielle Union talking about this was, do we even need to be trying to get into the rooms, or do we just make our own room? Do we make our own table? And now that's maybe becoming more possible as people are just saying enough. Like, we've been beating on these doors for so long. We're just building our own house over here. We're going to do our own thing, you know, and people, you know, and I think again, it's the idea of understanding and patience, but perhaps there's also been lots of patience, and people are in a way done with waiting in that way of just saying, we're not going to wait for you. Now we are going to just start creating change. And that's going to take time, because again, you're asking some people who have not been able to be in the room, not been able to be the powers that be, to now educate themselves on that, because there's education that needs to be happening on the other side. But now there's education on how do we then empower ourselves, as well as try to work with people who are wanting to make that connection and start making those inroads. You know, how can we do those two things? But also maybe we need to build our own room too, you know?
Absolutely.
So